Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to League on Lock. In the first week of the off-season heading into 2019, it was pretty clearly Liquid and 100 Thieves. They were the first teams, at least in North America, to finalize their starting rosters. And on paper, they look pretty darn good with a couple of world champion imports in Core JJ and Bang coming over to the starting lineup. Some people are saying, oh my God, they already won the offseason before 90% of the other teams have even announced their roster, and not even a day later, not even really 24 hours later, Misfits finalized their starting roster. And before they even announced their support, people were saying, wow, this is looking pretty darn good. And it does look good with Febiven coming back, Soaz leaving Fnatic and coming over. And they complete the lineup by signing a world finalist and two-time world semifinalist in GorillA, won the LCK a couple of times with Kingzone and Longzhu, and that has got to be the biggest import that's ever come over to Europe from Korea, and obviously that signals the end of the Prilla bot lane for the first time since 2014. They've been playing together in that bot lane. Even when they're going to new teams, they're going as a package duo, and now they are finally separated. And GorillA was saying that he did get offers from teams in the LCK, but he wanted to play in Europe, which is shocking and something you're not hearing very often. And usually these Korean imports that are coming over to EU specifically are kind of middle of the pack, middle tier team or players that don't really amount to too much in EU. But GorillA, I mean, this is a guy who's at times been looked at as the best support in the world, or top 2 or 3 supports on the planet, and I expect it to be a pretty darn good move for Misfits. And if you're looking at this roster, it looks insane. That bot lane of Hans Sama and GorillA should be one of the best, if not the best, in EU come 2019, because at times in the summer split, Hans Sama and Mickey were looking like some of the best ones going forward, and I think GorillA is going to be an upgrade on Mickey, and what that also signals, by the way, is that the rumors about Mickey going to G2 looking more and more likely each and every day. But the veteran leadership that GorillA, along with Soaz, are going to have, and just the international experience of performing on that biggest stage, this is a very veteran lineup now to come in and support the likes of Maxlore and Hans Sama, who are the only returning members from 2018. But if you're looking at that 2018 roster for Misfits, those are the 2 players that you would want to keep going forward. So kudos to Misfits. They have really put together a solid lineup. We're yet to see what exactly the rosters for G2 and Fnatic are going to be. Yes, there's the Perks Caps rumor that, again, seems to be coming true, but even if that's the case, we don't know who would replace Caps on Fnatic. But right now, this Misfits lineup looks like a legitimate threat and one of the favorites, if not top 3, probably even top 2, depending on what these other teams are, to take home the EU LCS crown in 2019. GorillA, you already saw in that announcement video, he can speak English pretty darn well, so communication should not be a big issue for this squad. It's just about developing that synergy with Hans Sama and GorillA, and it's going to be a bit of a change for him playing with a different AD carry, not named Prey, for the first time in 3+ years. So that will be a bit of an adjustment, but you've got to be feeling revitalized and refueled if you're Febiven, seeing this lineup around you after struggling oh so mightily in the 2018 summer split with Clutch in North America, coming back to this lineup, which definitely should have Worlds aspirations heading into 2019. I think you're excited if you're Febiven, and we're going to see a return to the dominant Febiven that we were accustomed to seeing in Europe. So Misfits fans, get hyped, because that roster is looking pretty darn good and might even rival or be better on paper than the likes of Team Liquid and 100 Thieves heading into 2019. So get hyped if you're a fan of the Rabbit. Some other EU news. Vitality announced the re-signing of Jack Troll and Cabo Shard, and Jizuke and Attila were already locked in, so 4/5 of that starting lineup remaining the same, but they did make one change, and it's a pretty big doozy. After Kikis signed with Rogue, he's not returning. They released Gilius, obviously earlier in 2018, so they brought in Mowgli from the Afrika Freaks, and this is a guy who was somewhat linked to SK Telecom when they were looking for a new jungler, either him or maybe Spirit. He ends up going to Vitality, so just the fact that he was even spoken about joining SKT is a huge signing for Vitality. And on first look, it probably seems like a very random player to bring in, but Vitality, while they were in boot camping in Korea, they were staying with the Afrika Freaks and scrimming from their gaming house, working with them, so they do have some experience with them. And Mowgli does speak English, probably not as well as GorillA, but he still speaks it decently. He'll only get better at it. Again, it's not like some of the Korean imports that we've seen in North America where they don't speak a lick of English when they come in, and they basically need another Korean player on that roster to help translate for them. Shouldn't be the case with Mowgli, which is good news because there is not another Korean player on that Vitality roster. We saw how aggressive Mowgli was in the early game for Afrika. Well, that matches the Vitality playstyle absolutely perfectly, as we saw at Worlds and throughout the entirety of really 2018 spring and summer. The early game is the name of the game for Vitality. When they got ahead in that early game, they were steamrolling to a win the majority of the time. When they're playing from behind, their win percentage dipped very drastically. So having an aggressive early game jungler like Mowgli in the lineup is only going to help them. And obviously mechanically, he's going to be a pretty significant upgrade over the likes of Kikis. He was probably Vitality's weakest member when it came to the world stage and playing against some other world-class junglers. So Mowgli definitely going to be helpful for Vitality. And two big Korean imports coming into EU for 2019. I'm sure franchising is playing a big change in that and a big part in that, transitioning to the LEC. It's not just NA now that are bringing in some top-tier Korean talent. EU, like I said before, have brought in some meddling, middle-of-the-pack Korean players, but now these are top-tier players. Mowgli was getting the majority of the starts over Spirit. Well, actually, not towards the end of it, as we saw Spirit actually played most of the games at Worlds, but Mowgli definitely deserving of a lot of starting time on Afrika, and he's a guy that people were hyped up for. He had the potential, he had the ceiling, and we'll see if he can reach it here under Yamato Cannon and the rest of Vitality here for 2019, excuse me. Vitality, I mean, they're going to have their work cut out for them. They definitely performed well in 2018 and exceeded expectations from the majority of people heading into that split, but now they're going to have some expectations on their shoulders considering how well they performed at Worlds. And if any of the other EU teams put up rosters close to Misfits, which you expect G2 and Fnatic to do, Vitality are going to be hard-pressed to stay in that top 4 window heading into the first year of the LEC, just because of how dominant some of these other rosters are going to be. And Fnatic, if they are losing caps, who knows what they're going to put in that mid lane. There's plenty of rumors, whether it's Froggen, Bjergsen leaving TSM, going to Fnatic, or just doing what they did with caps and finding some young talent. Some people are more excited for that, to bring in someone like Nemesis from the EU Masters or some other young up-and-coming mid laner. But that'll be some of the biggest news to break, either when that caps perks moves becomes official, and if so, who Fnatic brings in as their mid laner to replace the MVP of the summer split.